I'm going to do this a lot during this episode. Warning, this show may be triggering for anybody experiencing gambling-related harm. Please watch cautiously. We speak from our experiences only. Please seek professional help for a gambling addiction.
All right. Howdy. In the great state of Oklahoma, I'm Christina, and I last placed a bet in March of 2021.
And from the state of Connecticut, I'm Brian, and I haven't placed a bet since July of 2014. Christina, anything new on the recovery front?
Well, thank you for asking, Brian. There is something new. There is a new development in my recovery.
Oh.
I have talked about this before in my podcast, and I've talked about how there's one tribe casino that I haven't self-excluded because they were not part of the state self-exclusion, like the statewide ban. And so I had to actually physically go into the casino and self-ban, and I just haven't had the strength to do it. I was worried that it would, trigger something in me. And so I just literally have just stayed away. And I struggled so much over the holidays that I kept telling myself, I need to just go do it. Maybe it'll help with the urges, knowing that I can't go do it. And then I just decided I needed to do it. Like I felt like it was kind of this back escape hatch. Like I wasn't closing that world completely because it was still there. So I was driving past it. I had the strength I felt. I didn't have any money on me. And I thought, you know what? This is where it all started. This is where I gambled the most. This is where I'm going to end it. And so I went in. I went straight to the desk and I said, I need to self-exclude. They looked at me like, what? I'm like, I need to self-exclude. They all looked at each other like, who do we call? And I'm like, call security. They have the paperwork. And so, I mean, seriously, there had to be 8 of them
on the operator's end of this.
There was probably 8 of them behind the desk, and they were all just kind of standing there. And, I was like listening to all the sounds and stuff. And I was, they were like kind of looking at each other, like, who do you call? What do you do? And I thought, this is so odd. You would think that they would have the training.
Yeah.
To know exactly what to do. If somebody walks up and says, I want to self-exclude, they should know immediately what to do. And I said, call security. That's been my experience with everybody else that's self-excluded, that they went through security. So they did that. And while I was sitting there and I was waiting for the security to come up, I was watching people. This was a different experience for me to watch these people play. And, some were talking and laughing like what a gambling experience should be. But there were so many that were just no expression, just hoping whatever hit that machine gives them will fix whatever issue they're there for. And I just connected with that feeling when I was in there, And so security finally showed up with the paperwork, and they said, well, let's go in here and fill it out. And the guy was so nice, and I filled it all out. And then I had to wait for him to photocopy my ID. And I was just watching more people on the other side. And it was still a lot of just the numb, and I might have just been I can't think of the word where you inflict your own feelings on somebody else. I could have just been because that's how I felt the last time I was just doing that. But anyway, we got the paperwork done, and I had never felt so good to be escorted out by security in my life. I think that was the first time I was ever escorted out by security. And it just felt great. There was no shame. There was no guilt. I wasn't embarrassed. I was empowered, and it was an amazing feeling. And I'm glad I finally slammed that door.
First of all, congratulations on doing that. If that's something you've been trying to do, were you triggered at all? Did you find those old feelings coming back at all? And you were like, ooh, I remember that good juice.
Nope. The feelings that were coming up in there, because I felt really empowered. I felt really strong. But the feelings that were coming up in there was thankfulness, gratefulness, honest to goodness truth. This isn't my life anymore. And
That's great.
it felt like that. And I know that that feeling isn't always going to be the case. I know that I'm going to have moments where I'll miss it. I can't be unrealistic and think, oh, my recovery's solid, I'm never going to think about it again. That's just not, I talk about it every day. I feel good in the fact that I just keep moving forward. It's just one more thing that I move through. Like I still have a lot of stuff to clean up and tackle. You know, a lot of years I gambled, a lot of things I messed up, and I have a lot of things to work through. The IRS and myself are not best friends at the moment, but we're working on it. So I think through counseling and therapy and payments, we'll find a friendship again.
Why was it important for you to self-exclude from this particular location?
Because it's the one I started at. It was the one that I went to on those Friday nights when my friends were home with their babies and their families. And I was single and I didn't want to be social, but I didn't want to be at home by myself. And it's where it started up there. I've seen that place change from a little hole in the wall building to a big fancy building. Heck, I probably paid for some of the carpet. Matter of fact, I know I did. It was just kind of like more of symbolic for me.
Oh, okay.
And I think because I've been working on step 6 too. And I think that's kind of, you know, step 6 is preparing ourselves to have the character defects removed, right? So that was kind of just a symbolic gesture of like, I'm ready. I look at gambling, even though it's not technically considered a defect, it's the behaviors caused by our gambling. But I look at gambling as something I'm ready to have removed from my life in terms of the actual action of gambling. Gambling will be a part of my life, I hope, for the rest of my life in terms of advocacy and that kind of capacity. But yeah, I think it was just a symbolic thing for me to shut the door on that, to not have this escape hatch. And I felt really good since I did it. I gotta be honest, and I don't know if you felt this way, but when I did step into those first days of recovery, and I know so many people can relate to this, that gambling becomes such a part of you that when you do leave it, even though it's harming you, it's destroying your family, it's killing you literally, you still miss it. And it's so sick to say it. You know, it's so sick to think, how could you miss something that was literally ruining your life, that literally had you wanting to end your life? But because it was such a crutch for me, for every emotion, for every situation, I really struggled with the grief of that loss, you know, of having to lose that friend, that part of myself that I relied on so much. And so I thought maybe I'd experience a little bit of that whenever I self-excluded, but I did not. I don't know. I just felt like I've moved past it. I've moved on, you know, from that.
How did you feel just driving by and then just deciding I'm going to go in a casino?
Yeah, that was really weird because I drive by casinos. I'm in the Tulsa area. I live outside Tulsa, but I have to drive. I mean, if you're from this area or know this area, there are 8 casinos within a 30-minute drive of just me. And most of them are within 5 to 10 mile drive. So like I pass a casino every day on my way to work, every day on my way home. So it wasn't really like it hadn't been a thought for so long. And yeah, I was driving back this way and I moved to a different town. So I'm not as close to that one anymore. But so I don't normally go that way. And it kind of sets up at the top of the hill and it's, you know, it's a trek to get up there. And I was just driving and I saw that exit coming up and oh my God, how many times have I taken that exit? How many times have I come down that hill devastated? Like, I don't know. Something came over me and like, just do it. Just do it. You don't have any cash on you. Your bank cards won't work at their ATMs. Like, because I have my bank card set to where it won't, like, I have the option with my bank to set it that it won't allow you to use at gambling establishments. And so I set that pretty early on. And so even their ATMs, because the way that they're connected, you can't use them at their ATMs. I haven't tried it. I don't know for sure. But I took that as like, I have no access to money. And I think kind of what prompted that too is because I started getting mail again from them.
Oh,
I started getting their flyers, and I hadn't gotten them for pretty much since I started recovery. I hadn't seen a flyer. So I don't know how they found my information, but over the holidays, the flyers came in. So.
For anybody watching who does not know what self-exclusion is or what the hell we're talking about, self-exclusion is the act of you banning yourself from any one particular form of gambling, most likely a casino. Some casinos you can some states you can ban yourself from all the ones in the state. Some, if there's a lot of tribal casinos, generally you have to go to each one. Michigan, I know you can ban yourself from the 3 public casinos, but then you have to go around each one of the tribal ones, of which there are 23. So good luck. But I never self-excluded, Christina, from any property ever. And the reason is because with a lot of self-exclusion, if you get caught, they make you take a trespass charge. And I didn't trust myself not to gamble in order to not get a trespass charge. So I just thought, well, if I'm going to get in trouble for gambling, I don't want to get in trouble with the law on top of it. And I'm not comfortable with the fact that that is what happens. I understand, like, you kind of need a punishment in order to keep people away who don't want to gamble. But giving somebody a trespass charge on top of them clearly having some mental health struggles if they're dealing with an addiction is just plain savage to me. So that's why I never self-excluded.
And I hear a lot of that. I hear a lot of women, for a lot of people, self-exclusion, you'll hear people, okay, there's people that don't know that self-exclusion is an option. There's people that say self-exclusion doesn't work because it didn't work for them.
Yeah.
For me, it does work. The thought of getting in trouble that way, it does work for me.
Oh, God.
But I've talked to women and people who the thrill of being able to, I don't know, it just adds like another thrill to it. And so, that they'll do it. And I've talked to women who've never been in trouble before who had to go to court over trespassing. Yeah, I've heard that. And that did deter them. And then I've heard stories where they've gotten caught and, it just didn't help. But for me, it's an amazing tool. It's one of many that we can put in place to at least slow us down. I think for a lot of us, if it's in our head, we're just going to keep obsessing about it. And if we can put tools in place that at least slow that down, at least make us have to think about it or make us have to work harder, then it might give us more of a chance. Some of us.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just nice to have another tool to use to stop you from gambling if that's the route you want to choose. I just never chose it. I mean, I'm sure it would have worked for me. And I think probably I just wanted to gamble more, which is why ultimately I didn't choose it. But sometimes I get sort of like, when people talk about a national self-exclusion list, if it's a end all be all. And it's not, because there's so many forms of gambling that you cannot self-exclude from. And so it's sort of like, that sounds great, but it's not going to solve all the problems. So we shouldn't put all our eggs in that basket.
Especially the ones that aren't regulated by any kind of regulatory body. There's a lot of gambling establishments that aren't. So it's a real struggle of like, how do we solve that problem? But I did read that the state of Washington is believe in May going to be putting out their statewide self-exclusion. If I read that correctly.
Can I tell you a small secret? I have a US map up behind the computer. And when you said Washington, I immediately looked up because I went, is Washington on top of Oregon or under Oregon? And I guess, the top of the map or slightly under. I had to look, and that's why I looked. I'm ashamed. I'm not ashamed. My geography skills are not that great, but
Yeah, you
Um,
couldn't. If you asked me any of the states like between the East Coast and the West Coast, I probably would be like,
like, I don't know, they're all in there.
I know I'm in the middle. That's all I know. I think Kansas is above me and Texas is below.
You have the small handle. You're shaped like a meat cutter.
Yeah. They call that the panhandle. It's like more like a pan, you know.
Oh, I guess
Um,
if you want to be technical.
well, I'm an Okie, so let's get technical about it. If you're going to talk about a state, well, that's the panhandle. But yeah, you know what's interesting too, and I was looking at a map that they had up on the Oklahoma Council. I'm sorry, Oklahoma Association for Problem Gambling and Gaming. You know, they have a lot of their information and resources up there, and they had this map that showed where all the casinos were, where all the available help through their programs were. And what's interesting is when you look at that map and you can see the clusters of like casinos, you can see the clusters of yellow, but then as it spreads out going west, um, kind of southwest, like you can see the casinos pop up, but the help is like a lot less noticeable. Like there's some where there's no help at all. Like the whole probably southwestern quarter of the state, there's casinos and no resources as far as like and our state did implement a Zoom program,
That's good.
which is great because of that, because these casinos are in such rural areas that they're not around big cities with gambling or mental health facilities to get the help. So I don't know where I was going with that.
You
But
were
when you talked
about to
about the
go
map,
on to, speaking of help, we'd like to talk to you right now about Gamban. Gamban is the sponsor of this program, and Gamban offers blocking software for your phone, tablet, or computer to block you from online gambling. They have two plans. One is an annual plan, a little cheaper, or a monthly plan, slightly more, but still both very cheap and affordable. And it's a great deal for you to be able to block your online gambling for all of your situations. Another tool for your toolbox to provide friction so you don't gamble because you know that you don't want to gamble. So check out Gamban.com.
so smooth. You're so good at that.
Bam. Well, you
Very
prompted
smooth.
me. You prompted me for our wonderful sponsor, Gamban.
Yes, they are wonderful people. Hi, Jack. So let's talk about this too in relation to the New York state going online sports betting. This is a great, like it's important to talk about these tools because that is an amazing tool if you struggle with online gambling. And now with the new online sports betting available in New York, it's a great time to install it.
What are we up to? How many? One, two, I don't know. I lost count of how many states have online gambling. I know my home state of Michigan does for sure, and plenty of it. So it is a good tool to block that. And that is just, you're not even giving people a chance with online gambling. That's so insidious. You know that we both know people who have gambled on the toilet, who have sat there on their phone and gone in to use the bathroom, who are actually gambling on their phone
Let's
while
be honest, it's
sitting
going
on
to
the
be men.
toilet.
Men.
Yes. The ones I know of, yes. And it's so insidious. I know people who roll over in the middle of the night and they have to check and see if they won and if they can place more bets, or who just aren't asleep and are up in the middle of the night placing bets on their phone. When you have to go to a facility, you have to get in the car, you need gas money, you need time. With the phone, you don't need any of that. And that's what's scary about it. So use Gamban. I didn't mean to tie that
Absolutely.
into the ad still, but use it.
No, it's a great point. I mean, in a lot of states too, and we'll just say this, a lot of states will offer, I don't know exactly which states, maybe we can do a list of who actually offer Gamban. Like if it's something you just feel like, oh, I can't afford it. One, it's going to be cheaper than what you're spending, period, gambling. But two, some states do offer it as part of their program. So
6 months ago, I knew who they were. There were about 5 states. I believe it was New Jersey, West Virginia, Minnesota, North Carolina. Those are the ones I knew of at the time.
And there may be
they've
more.
added
There may
some more.
be, yeah. But just check with your state and see if it's something that they offer. If not, go to the
Yeah, if you can't. But honestly, we're talking about I think $3.50 a month on the monthly plan, or like
$34
$270 or something on the yearly plan a month. So it's not much to put a few dollars into your recovery. And GA meetings, usually everyone throws in $1 to support the meeting. You know,
$2. I'm eating. It's $2.
Oh, really? See, there you go. So, and it's good. It's good to spend a little money on your addiction, because once you stop gambling, money comes back. It's the first thing that starts coming back when you stop gambling. So stop gambling.
You guys,
I kind of feel like an ass saying it that way, because I know that it's harder than that. But seriously, there is a day that comes where you literally just have to stop, because nothing is going to stop you.
You have to be the one to do it. My new motto is, you got to stop the bleeding to start the healing.
I like it. Because there was a lot of bleeding in my days.
Yeah, mine too.
Well, I will tell this story since it is story time, Christina.
Story time for our new TikTok series, Confessions of a Gambling Addict.
Well, here's my confession. When I was 28, 29, I started working 3 jobs because I had relapsed on my gambling. And so I started working 3 jobs so that way I could not only make money in order to pay back my debts from gambling, but also take up all my time so I wouldn't gamble. So I was working 96 hours a week. So it was literally like all day long, every day, except for Sunday night. I had a 4-hour block where I got off work at 6:30 and I went to the bar with some people who I worked with at that job. And in this little window of time I had on a Sunday night, I overdid it. And I left the bar because I got angry about something. I left the bar mad, and I was driving down the road, and all of a sudden my car kicked sideways. I was on the highway. I was going about 75. My car kicked sideways, flips over. Next thing I know, I got like a face full of dirt. And then the next thing I know, I wake up outside the car, and I'm like, what in the world? I didn't see the car. All it was the moon was out, bright and shining. Couldn't see my car. Cars are just driving by me. It's like it didn't even happen, right? And then all of a sudden, I kind of get up from the ditch, and I look at my feet, and they're cold. My shoes are gone, both shoes off my feet. And then I notice the car is upside down in a ditch. I have no idea how I got outside the car. I had my seatbelt on.
Wow.
Next thing I know, fire truck, ambulance, everybody shows up. Cops show up. I immediately say, I was drinking. I'm sorry. I felt like an ass, but that's what I did. I confessed right away. And the gentleman said, the officer said, how did you get outside the car? And I said, oh, well, I was thrown outside the car. I woke up outside the car. And he said, oh, you have to go to the hospital. So he sent me to the hospital instead of jail, which was a much better way to go. Did not end up going to jail at all for it. Did have to go to court a bunch of times for it. But what had happened, the back left wheel of the vehicle broke off. So this is one of those circumstances where not only should you not drink and drive, obviously, and it's a lesson I learned the hard way, but you don't do it because sometimes just bad things just happen that don't have to do with the drinking and the driving. The back wheel broke off this car. My seatbelt snapped off my body, and somehow I went through one of the windows, and I didn't rip open my body on glass. Had bruises all over my body. But because of that accident, I moved back home with my parents for the 3rd time in my 20s at the age of 29. And it was the most embarrassing, depressing time in my life. I hated everything about it, but I was lucky as hell that they took me in. And then it was back onto the road of recovery, going back to meetings, and made it, I think, about 2 years before My dad died and I relapsed, but that was another story. But that car accident, I had to go to counseling and see a counselor. The counselor said, "Hey, you don't have a drinking problem." And I said, "I know." She said, "You have a gambling problem." And I said, "I know." And so I got paid for, I saw a therapist who was a gambling specific therapist for about 20 weeks. And it was so helpful. And went back to my GA room and they were welcoming, told them what happened. And, there's that first apprehensiveness of like, oh, are they going to accept me back? Because they were cool. Everybody was
They
cool.
always will. They will always accept you back. If you're somebody that thinks.
I within them, I quit my one job. It was too many jobs. And then I just worked 2 for a while longer. And then eventually got down to 1 and back on the track of life until my next relapse. But that's another story.
Another story for another day. What I took away from that too is it kind of brought it back moments of like when we're gambling, our money is gambling money, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't spend it on like everyday expenses, that being car maintenance. Like how much car maintenance did you avoid? Like I remember going like 10,000 miles over on my oil change, like running my tires bald. I remember when I finally got new tires, the guy was like, "Man, you were trying to get every penny out of them tires, weren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's it. That's it." But isn't that the truth?
It is. It was not in that specific case. What I had done was borrowed my grandmother's car that hadn't been driven in 5 years. Oh. Because it was wintertime and I had a vehicle that was rear wheel drive and it wasn't very good in the snow. So I borrowed her vehicle for the winter for, what was supposed to be 3 months. And it ended up being, a month. And then I totaled her car, an old Buick LeSabre. So that it sat in her garage for a while. So that's what did it. But I do have another story I'll tell another time about that exact thing that you're talking about, avoiding paying bills because it's gambling money. And it caused me through this crazy, crazy experience to basically spend the day homeless in the middle of Podunk, Illinois. Podunk being the description of the town I was in and not the name of it.
Yeah, I think probably we could that's kind of why we're doing the series, right? To kind of talk about these stories, not in a way that, hey, I did this, but in a way that it releases some of the weight and guilt of these stories, but also so that we can like as terrible as this might sound, you can connect with somebody else that kind of did shitty things too. And you're like, okay, I wasn't the only one that did that stuff.
Like you said, the car maintenance, that spoke to me right away. There was so much stuff I didn't take care of because I wanted to gamble. If you don't pay a $200 bill, immediately you go, "Oh, I have $200 to gamble." Right. So I would frequently not pay car payments because that was always, at the time, I think it was like $210, my car payment. And you could get away with being 30, even 60 days late on car payments. They don't, it's like 90 before they start calling you and really asking you. That's $600 right there. And so it's very easy to not pay your bills and to use that money for gambling, especially when you're already down, especially when your bank account is negative to begin with because of the gambling and you have payday loans. It all makes sense in the mind of the gambler.
Yeah. I kind of didn't know if I would go here, but I kind of feel like talking about like when I had my car repossessed. Like I didn't know that I was going to go there, but I feel like I can probably talk about it. Because I think we both have this kind of story of a repossession, and I think it might be common. There are certain types of gamblers that it never affected their finances. I know somebody that still has, was able to keep an amazing credit score and pay her bills. She just gambled with everything else she had, maybe kept her cupboards bare. But for some of us, we cross that line. We just keep going. And for me, I remember thinking, for me, a lot of the times was like, I could just win back the money. I'll just win back the money and I'll catch it all up and it'll be fine. And I remember this specific time and I had a car. My sister was a co-signer on it. And because I was upside down on my other car, but we had always kind of co-signed for each other on previous things because we were always both like really responsible. I was a really responsible person financially until the gambling addiction really took hold of me. And it really changed when I got on some medicine that really changed my thought process and like really numbed out my thought process. And that's when my finances really just like, that's when I didn't care that I was affecting my future with this gambling. You know, we'd never had a problem. We trusted each other, and I fell behind, and like, she would get the letter too. Like, we were both on there, and she would get the letter too. And I would gaslight the shit out of it and be like, no, I paid it. I took care of it. And most of the time I did. It was just late. I look back at that moment and I'm like, I just wish I would have been honest with her, and it probably would have saved us both so much grief. But anyway, eventually it did get repossessed, and I still tried. Like, the car was gone, and I remember trying to tell her. I remember just trying to tell her about it, but I couldn't tell her about it. And she's actually going to come on my podcast and we're going to talk about this. Oh, but cool. I couldn't tell her about it. So she finally just called the bank and got the story from the bank. And then she called me and she's just like, stop. You know, I couldn't tell her the truth. I could not tell her the truth until she finally called me on it. And this is not easy to talk about, but I'm talking about it because I know there's a lot of people out there who live in shame and guilt for those decisions. And my sister and I are good. She's my biggest supporter. And like, I couldn't be more thankful that she's my twin. The thing that I still think about this story is just how I kept saying no. Like, now looking back at it, I look at the lies and the things that they did, and I'm like, how could she not like even believe me for a second? Like, that's my story.
Okay. It's mine. I mean, my last time gambling, I ended up filing bankruptcy, which is why my car was repossessed. I knew it was coming, so I was very much just like, okay, take it. I was just wondering about your experience with the day they took it. Were you home? I was not home. My roommate / landlord in California, I was living there, but I was back in Michigan because I was home doing something. And she called me and she goes, hey, someone with a tow truck is taking your car. And I said, yep, that's supposed to happen. Thanks.
Yeah, I was home, and it was about 10:30 at night. Like, I honestly, I had the money to catch it up. And this is kind of the thing that gets me, is I had the money to catch it up. Actually, my sister had given me the money to catch it up. And believe it or not, I did not gamble it. I was going to catch it up that Monday morning because the bank that we banked at was out of town. And I was going to drive it over there that Monday morning and just get it caught up. And I for some reason, I guess when I had talked to them, I made the deal for that Friday morning and not the Monday morning. And so when I didn't show up that Friday morning, they sent it in for repossession and picked it up at 10:30 that Friday night. And I got a big bang on the door. And he was like, I mean, he was kind enough. He's like, do you want to get anything out of it? And I was like, I didn't really have anything in it. And so I got a few things. And so it was late at night. The neighbors didn't see it. It wasn't a big dramatic thing. And we could have, that following week, we could have straightened it out, but I think it was just one of those situations where it just gotten like to be overwhelming. And, you know, at this moment, I have not chosen to file bankruptcy. I have just, just got back on track with things and just working through things for me personally. But yeah, I was there. It was the first time that happened to me, like it's that moment of like, I can't believe this is my life. And you're like, I'm 29 years old. Well, I was 40 years old. So, like it's just, I think that gets me a lot too. It's like, I was 40 years old. I wasn't some 18-year-old kid, or some 20-something kid. I was a 40-year-old
I was
wife.
33 when it was repossessed. It's a little closer.
Yeah. Little, but
yeah. Well, I didn't know we were going to do Car Talk today. There's that old show that used to be on called Car Talk. I might still be on. I don't know.
I don't know.
All our car stories today.
Stuff. Yeah.
Well, shall we call it an hour?
Yeah. Has it been an hour?
No, but we're just lying so we can get out of here on a short episode.
Yeah. And this is our fireside chat. Is that what we're calling this?
Our fireside chat. There should be a big raging fire behind us.
Yeah. Well, Brian, it was nice to see you.
Christina, it was nice to see you as well. I look forward to our next discussion with a friend of ours who is in the same recovery group as us, who will be on the next very episode to discuss her journey through this.
Yes, I love her. I adore her. I'm thankful that she is a sister in recovery and a friend. So you'll have to tune in and see who it is.
Well, everybody, stay tuned for those phone numbers. Thanks for watching The Bet Free Life. For Christina, I'm Brian. Bye.
Bye. Talking helps. Hashtag talking helps.